Hi, I'm Wes Allen with DM Tales, and today I'm going to talk about how my first adventure ended up becoming based on holiday movie tropes. Roll it. So rewind to last spring, and I jumped back into tabletop role-playing games for the first time in decades. It was wonderful. It gave me something to do at a time where every day seemed like the last. All social interaction had basically dried up, and stress was just adding upon stress after stress after stress. It was a rough time. But playing D&D with some old friends allowed me to have some social interaction. It gave me an outlet for my imagination, which is always important. And after a few months of playing, I began to ponder what it would be like to run my own game and who I would invite to play at the table. Virtual table, anyway. Over the summer, I began to look at what this world would be like, and I've talked a little bit about that in my previous videos. Around September, I began seeing videos for this new virtual tabletop called Foundry, VTT, and that really sparked my interest as something that I wanted to try doing. A little bit further into the fall, Dungeon Draft came out for Mac, and I jumped in, and I have not looked back. Started thinking about the plot hooks that would draw characters into this campaign that I was calling the Arneon Society, and thinking about how those adventures would pan out. But in late fall, one of our friends began to deal with a family health emergency. It turned out to be nothing huge, but it was, a stressful time for them. And because all our social interactions were beginning to dry up again with the coming of the colder weather, it was really hard to not be there for our friends at a time where, they needed folks around. So I knew that we were going to need to do something that would, keep our friendship circle together, allowing us opportunities to talk and chat and have fun together. And I thought, hey, why not have a D&D session that was just for our friends and neighbors? But because it was the folks that my wife and I hang out with all the time, I knew I wanted my wife to join the club. But she's never showed any interest at all at playing a tabletop role-playing game, so I knew I would need a very specific hook in order to get her to want to play. So that got me pondering. During the holiday season, mid-November through December and early January, my wife and I have a tradition. We open up a bottle of wine, we sit on the couch in our living room, we pop on Netflix or whatever else is out, and we watch all the holiday movies that the different studios have pumped out throughout the year. They are silly, they are ridiculous. These are the ones where people have some great crisis of personality or there's some great tragedy in town and they all come back together and, old relationships are renewed and people discover one another and after, 12 hours they fall in love and they spend their lives happily ever after. So realistic. And one of the really cool things is that Netflix actually has a holiday movie shared universe, which just completely blows my mind. I think it predates Marvel. So I began to wonder, if my wife and I like to do that, could I base a holiday adventure, 1 or 2 sessions, maybe 1 or 2 more, around Hallmark movie tropes? Didn't know if this was going to be a good idea because I've never done this before. I'd never run a game, I've never set up a campaign, and this might have been a little bit too silly and far out for folks to really think that this would be something worth playing. So I got on the Discord chat for my group, which I have now affectionately called the Monday Murder Hobos, and I asked them, hey, does basing a 1-shot or 2-shot campaign on Hallmark movie tropes make sense to you? Does this sound like something that would be interesting? And not 2 seconds passed when one of the members texted back inside the Discord chat with one word, Howlmark. And I went, oh! And thus the Howlmark Holiday Adventures were born. I created a scenario where there was a young woman who decided she wanted to be a wizard, which meant leaving her family business, a little bit of bad blood between her and her aunt. But after several years, she gets called back to kind of patch things up with her aunt and see how things are going, and discovers that the town is in trouble. There's an evil mining consortium around, as such things happen. And they now have to deal with it to save the town, repair relationships, and have everybody live there happily ever after. Even threw in an NPC who is an old childhood friend who becomes a potential romantic interest, although there are obstacles in the way. Great Hallmark stuff. Introduced this to my neighbors, they played it, had a reasonably good time playing. We've extended the campaign beyond the initial one-shot, and after that got done, I introduced it to my Monday Murder Hobo group, and they began to play. And this is why they got the name the Monday Murder Hobos, because they chased down an NPC who was supposed to survive to Act 3, and they killed him in the first session. Oh well. So this has been a lot of fun, and it shows me that if you try hard enough and if you think outside the box enough, you can turn just about anything into a successful D&D adventure. In fact, what I'm going to do is eventually I would like to package up the materials that I created for that one shot with the PCs and the NPCs and all the maps and everything, and let that out as a PDF for people who want to play. Even cooler, because I'm basing it on Hallmark movie tropes, I have all these sets that I'm just going to reuse year after year after year and just move it into different places on the world map, because that's what Hallmark does, and rewrite a new adventure with slightly different plot lines and the characters rearranged. It should be a lot of fun. Next week I'm going to go back to talking about some of the role-playing stories that I have with these two groups that I'm running at present, and maybe I'll share a story or two of my own. In the future, I'm going to start doing some tool reviews, as well as hopefully bringing some folks on to talk in a live stream chat to get their experiences as being a DM or a game master or something, and get their insights on what it's like to be part of the tabletop role-playing family. Until then, happy playing, everyone.